All right. Welcome back, you beautiful souls. A couple of things. I apologize for not uploading. I've been having issues with my with the converting program that I have, and the sound quality is not great at all. I had a couple of things happen IRL that made my stuttering problem where I can get locked up and like I loop what I say for a few seconds. So I apologize about that. Yesterday I did try getting a couple of uploads done, but none of them turned out okay. I've been trying to really make better quality videos, overlaying like sound backgrounds and stuff like that. So let's get to this new what if. And I apologize for those who I've talked about, but I'm going to. Ymir is one of the. I'm going to have to wait on that one to do it. So I am going to do my hyper adaptation Deku. And another thing, I tried for a good month now to try to find the original artist of this. I can't find who originally did it. So if you do know if you know where the original artist is at, like on social media, or if you know their name, please let me know in the comment section or over Discord in a private message, and that way I can give credit to the appropriate artist. But as you guys will probably can tell, this will be another Fem Deku. And I've thought about this. And like I've really been planning this out. Like I do have a few things. And I know Kirshosh, he just started his What If Deku had a Predator's abilities, and he's basically using the same quirk. And I actually started discussing this on Discord with a few people, either the day, several hours before he even uploaded the first video in that, or the day before. I would have to check the timestamps. But, Kirsho, God, there's 3 more to YouTube whatevers that I know have done an adaptation. One who's recently stopped doing YouTube to focus more on his college work, and the other 2, they haven't really continued the series and how they were doing it, and it's their own thing. So in this, he's like Deku. Her name will be Sakura Midoriya, or Midoriya Sakura, depending on if you want to say it the English way or the Japanese way. Either first name or last name first, depending on what culture you're coming from. So Deku, she's born, and some accident like happens, and the medical staff are running around with like basically their heads chopped off, like basically like the saying, if you don't, basically meaning like they're running around in a panic without like any clear notion of what they're going to be doing. So they one of the nurses kinda accidentally dropped the baby, and oh boy, Inko sitting there screaming like in horror, Hasashi, Inka is screaming in horror while crying. Hasashi's screaming at the top of his lungs. And the nurse is just looking there mortified. Just kind of stuck, on her knee, kneeling down. And yes, the nurse, when she was transitioning little Sakura to her mother from the God, it's not an incubation chamber, it's a medical crib. I should get the term that's used for it because children's stuff wasn't really something I studied. But it's a medical crib. The little tiny cribs, it's not an incubation chamber that they put preemies in. And the only reason why I know that is because of recently family member had someone a couple months before they were supposed to be born. But in any case, back to the story. So when they were moving Sakura from her medical crib to her mother's arms, there was a shaking in the building, which caused the nurse to trip, basically dropping the baby. And Inko, like I said, is crying. Asaf's screaming at the top of his lungs, being kind of aggressive, and the nurse is just sitting there, kind of tearing up, and it was an accident. It was an accident. And all of a sudden, Sakura, she starts crying. And this is when another nurse comes and picks her up and basically takes her over to the other bed that's in the room and places her down and then proceeds to look her over. And I'll say this nurse has an X-ray quirk. They have an X-ray vision quirk, which is why they're in the medical field. So they're looking at her the guy, he's looking at this little baby, and he just kind of jumps back, and they're like, "Oh, what's up?" And he's like, "Your baby has a quirk." What do you mean? She just healed her bones just healed in front of my eyes. She has, I think she may have a regeneration quirk. Yeah, kind of, sort of, but not really. It's just a side effect of her actual quirk. So they goes that's weird. That doesn't run in my family. And then they turn to Hasashi, and Hasashi just has this look of worry on his face. And he's like, Are you sure it's regeneration and not something else?" Asks Hasashi, and the nurse thinks well, they would have to run some tests to confirm it, but I don't know what else it could be if that. So they do run some tests with Inko and Hasashi's permission. Nothing too extreme because, for Christ's sakes, it's a newborn baby. Sakura, she's less than a week old. So they're not gonna put this baby through the ringers. So they take a blood sample, and when they pull the needle out, the needle hole doesn't heal, and they think, this is weird. So they do make, albeit not super hard, a little scratch on the palm of her hand, the little tip of her finger. And Sakura, she's crying and everything, and then she just stops crying, but the little scratch doesn't heal. So they're like, that's weird. And nurse is like, I know what I saw. I wouldn't make something up like this. And then the doctor, after getting all the test results and everything, walks in the room and goes feeding Sakura. And he is like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, the baby was. And then the doctor's like, it's fine, Miss Midoriya. That's perfectly normal. Plus, it's good for a mother and daughter to develop like it brings brings children closer to their mother. So the Hisashi's there too, and the doctor's like, so Miss Midoriya, you said regeneration and stuff doesn't run in your family, and the same thing with you, Hisashi. But you asked if it could be something else. What made you say that? And Hisashi's like, well, I don't. I've never met him, but apparently there's someone like our ancestor of sorts. He's one of the, I can't really say, but he has a quirk that's different. He can adapt to things from what I've heard. But apparently, a side effect of it is like he can regenerate certain injuries. And the doctor's eyes go wide, and the doctor's like, puts his finger up to his lips, basically signifying Hisashi to shut the fuck up. And he basically writes something down. He rips a little piece of paper out, and writes down a name. And he shows the piece of paper to Hisashi, and Hisashi just kind of nods yes. And because the doctor, he's not like he's not the All for One doctor. Like, that's totally different thing. He's a really good doctor, and he's researched, he's read different medical papers and stuff like that, and he's come across a specific name about someone that's been around for a long time. And they are reclusive. Like, finding this person to kind of get a sample of like their blood to kind of test it to see to advance medical science, because apparently this person's immune to a bunch of different things, and no one really can figure it out. Plus, he's been living for rumored to be several hundred years old. We'll leave it at that right now. So Hisashi like nods yes, and the doctor's like, whew. And he basically like puts the piece of paper in his mouth and eats it. So the name he wrote down, it could cause some issues if it's spoken out loud. And from what the doctors, he basically views this individual as a patient. So there's like the doctor-patient cause that he kind of uses about any of the information that he collects on this individual, so that he doesn't necessarily have to speak about it. So then he turns to Hisashi. He's like, well, if your daughter has the same quirk as that person, you should probably get in touch with them and explain the situation. So Hisashi contacts his parents, basically saying that, well, hey, I think little Sakura, I think she we have Oji-san Agil's Quirk. And this kind of, it was worrisome for Sashi's parents. And they're like, oh no, another freaks in the family. Because Hasashi himself may have never met this individual, but I'm going to say his father has. And so has like his mother. And they're like, oh man, why couldn't it have been later? So they do make a few phone calls around, and this is going to take several years for us to, for them to like get in contact with this individual. Because if Sakura does indeed have a very similar quirk to his, this would be a particular child that he would take a great interest in training. Yeah, training. Training's a good word. Training's definitely a good word for that. So Sakura's life is pretty much the same. So from Sakura's birth to this individual coming into her life, it's going to take some time because this dude basically lives in seclusion, like away from society altogether. And so Sakura's life is pretty much going to follow canon Deku's life up until the point, because she's always been told that she has a quirk, they just don't know exactly what it is or what it can do. So instead of being labeled Deku for like being quirkless, he's labeled Deku for being for having a useless quirk. Like hell, she like even the eyeball kid like has a cooler quirk than hers or whatever because she doesn't even know what her quirk is. So she is bullied by a lot of different kids. And Katsuki was sort of friends with her, like as they growing up. But in the recent years, since Katsuki's quirk has activated, he is kind of becoming more and more of a dick towards her. And one day, like Sakura, she's walking home and she sees Katsuki and his goons picking on this girl. And Sakura, she runs up and gets between Katsuki and the little girl. And she tells Katsuki, is like, Kachan, if you don't stop, I'm never gonna forgive you. And Katsuki's like, oh, what is a useless quirk person like? What are you gonna do? Use your useless quirk to fight me? And as Katsuki throws a punch, he creates an explosion to his shock and mortification. He accidentally created a bigger explosion than he normally does to like scare people. And then he's looking over, like the girl that was there is freaking out because she has blood on her face, and Bakugo's goons, like, they basically ran off at this point. And Katsuki's just standing there, looking at his hand and looking down at the ground. And the girl basically is like, you're a villain, and gets up and runs away. And Katsuki's still mortified. Like, he's seeing that from his perspective, Sakura's just laying there and part of her jaw is missing and like part of her shoulders missing, and Katsuki's thinking his life is over and he just killed his best friend, or his used to be best friend. And he's crying, and then Sakura body begins to stand up, which freaks Katsuki out even more. And then he just hears some gargling, and then he meets eyes with Sakura, and her jaw has started to reform, and now she can actually speak properly. She's like, damn, Kaja, that really hurt. And it feels like my entire left side is on fire. I don't feel too good. And then she looks over at her shoulder and she sees it begin to pop back into place. And this is when Katsuki's kind of brought out of shock, and he runs up to her and is like, what? Sakura, you have a regeneration quirk? And Sakura is like, no, but what happened? And Katsuki drops to his knees and begins to apologize. It's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. And at this point, a hero arrives, and he's because the girl, a small child running, crying with blood on their face, is going to draw attention no matter where you are, unless you're in the middle of a freaking war zone, in my book. So the little girl explains, and the hero rushes over because apparently a kid's quirk went out of whack and someone was severely hurt. So when the hero gets there, he just sees this boy on the ground, basically crying and apologizing, and he runs up and he's like, young lady, you need to step back away from the boy. And then he notices part of her neck kind of reforming, because I would say the left portion, where part of her jaw, half her jaw was missing, part of her neck was burnt, and they just see her neck kind of reforming, almost shining a little bit. So when the hero's like, oh, you were the person that got killed? And Sakura's like, what do you mean? And this is when Katsuki, through the tears, is like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you like that, Sakura. And she's like, you mean the little scratch here? And this is when the hero basically pulls out a little makeup kit, and she basically turns it to Sakura, and Sakura sees her neck kind of really fucked up. It's still healing very slowly. Because I would say the top level of the skin is kind of gone. Is gone still. And no, Sakura, she doesn't have regeneration per se. It's just her quirk is hyper adaptation. Basically, her body will adapt at a hyper, at a hyperactive rate, to where she's effectively immortal unless you destroy her brain completely, quite frankly. She would effectively be immortal, because any damage to your body that would kill it, that would any normal person, mortal wounds are scratches to Sakura, because their body will adapt to keep her alive. basically. So the little ability that she's unlocked from this is her combined with the shock to her system when she was a baby, like her skull basically getting caved in. Like her skull was healed, she has gained a slight healing factor. Not on the levels of it to be completely called a regeneration, but more like, say you break your arm normally, like this is like, she doesn't develop this unless she won't heal that fast unless it's a life-threatening injury. So say you break like your forearm, and the doctors tell you it'll be a year recovery time. Basically, she can heal that in a third of the time that it would take a normal person to heal. So nothing too extravagant, except in cases like now where if her body didn't adapt to increase the healing of these certain areas, then she would have died. So Sakura's just in shock. She's like, what, Kajan? You hurt me. You used your quirk, didn't you? And Katsuki just begins to even cry even more and apologizing. And the hero's like, oh, calm down, you two. Calm down. It was an accident, right? And Katsuki's like, yeah, I don't know. I just meant to create a small explosion to scare it. I didn't mean to make something that big. And this is the beginning to where Katsuki realizes that his quirk is very dangerous. And needless to say, this is about the time when someone has basically come down from the fabled mountain. So is Sakura, she, like, the hero takes her and Katsuki to like closest hospital and explains the situation. They call the children's parents. Mitsuki gets there and she's a little worried, and she decides to stick around until Inko gets there to pick up Sakura, basically wanting to apologize for her son hurting her daughter. Sorry. Basically, Mitsuki wants to apologize to Inko for her son hurting Sakura. So they do, and Inko's a little upset, but she understands that was an accident, but she's very, she's upset because if Sakura didn't have the quirk she did, she probably would have died. So another thing I wanted to say in this, what if not 20% of the world is quirkless, but 15% are quirkless? Because I will say quirks started showing up a little bit sooner in certain cases, like fables of people that were like witches or something, or demons and stuff like that, come from like people that were born with quirks in ancient times. Not really like these are like one in like several hundred, like one in a trillion. And coincidentally, like over the years, like it started to get more and more common, and then eventually like it took off. So 15% are quirkless in this what if. So conversation between Inko and Mitsuki kind of goes like this. Mitsuki's bowing her head, and Katsuki, he's there too, and they're apologizing, and Inko just kind of walks up to Mitsuki and basically lifts her up, and she's like, Bakugo, you really a ditz, right? And then she looks to Katsuki, and she's like, yo man, maybe now you understand that your quirks can be very dangerous, and you should probably work on your control over it. Don't so that accidents like this don't happen again. And if my little Sakura, if she didn't have a heal, like her quirk didn't involve like certain types of healing, it could have been very bad. Okay. I'm not upset with you, young man, but you really need to be more careful with your quirk because you could potentially, like, even me. And she basically uses her quirk to kind of lift him up, and Katsuki's a little bit scared. And then Inko lightly puts him back down, because I'm gonna say Inko's quirk is a little bit stronger than in canon, just for plot convenience. With the fact that less percentage of the population, quirks are a little bit stronger, and with each new generation, the quirks get stronger and stronger. So with quirks really developing at like sooner in the timeline than what they do in canon, and less the population being quirkless as a result, people who have quirks, like their quirks tend to be a little bit stronger on top of that. So they like, and then she puts Katsuki down, and he's like, what did I do to deserve that? And Anko's like, no, sweetie, it wasn't anything to do with that. You see, I can lift things with my mind hands. Like, it's weird. It's hard to explain. But basically, I can lift things up, and I can just drop them from any distance. And if I did that with a person, it could kill them. So it's not that your quirk's dangerous per se. It's just you've got to be careful with your quirks, because they could potentially hurt someone, no matter what your quirk is. Even a quirk like your mom's here. Like, you have a mixture of both your parents' quirks, right? Your mom here, she sweats nitroglycerin, correct? Well, if someone wanted to, they could take her sweat and create a bomb. So you see, it doesn't matter what type of quirk you have. It could be dangerous, it could be villainous. It doesn't matter what type of quirk you has. It's all on how the person who has the quirk uses it that determines if it's dangerous or not. But any quirk can be potentially dangerous, even Sakura's, because she could do something we don't even know what could happen with her. You understand, young man? And Katsuki, like, basically wipes tears away, and he's like, yeah, I understand, and I'm really sorry. Like, and he's like, I can promise I won't mess with her again. And Mitsuki, like apologizes again to Inko, and Inko just kind of smiles. But all the while, Inko was thinking, like, oh my god, my baby, my baby, my baby, my baby. But she understood that, like, if things were reversed, she can get where Mitsuki's coming from. And I would say Inko's, like, has that motherly personality, at least from what's in the manga and what has been shown so far in the anime. You don't see too much in season 3 or season 4, but season 1 and season 2 you did see it. But Inko seems like she's the type of person that if she sees a child in trouble, she would be the type of person that would want to help them. So instead of like yelling at Kotsky in this and potentially scarring him even more than he already has, she basically said something that she thought may help the kid deal with what he did in a positive way. But she's just thinking, it's like, if you guys were older, I would definitely be screaming at you right now. But you're 5. Kind of thing. And she really wanted to, like, lean into Mitsuki about raising such, like, a problem child. But that was neither here nor there. After what she saw, how Kotsky interacted with her. And now she just turns around and she's like, okay, now my kid. So she comes into the room, and I would say Hisashi and Inko kind of arrived there at the same time with each other. And Hisashi basically went, like, just walked off. Like, he didn't want to deal with the situation. He was more like, my baby girl's been hurt, like, I'm going to see my kid. And basically, like, leaving Inko to deal with it. So Inko walks in the room, and Hisashi's sitting there kind of holding Sakura. And Sakura's like, Mom, like, I'm sorry. And Inka just runs over to her, kind of crying. It's like, it's okay, baby. You'll be fine. And it looks like you're already started to heal up, like, better. And she kind of turns to her. I'm just like, yeah, but that may scar, and I have to keep it covered for a couple of weeks. Doctors say that I don't have a healing quirk, but, like, for some reason, it's healed somewhat. And from what they gathered from the girl, I was missing a job, like half my face, apparently. And at this, the lights kind of start flickering in the building before everything basically goes out in like the area. And then when the generators kick on, there's a man standing in the room. I forgot to pause this real quick. There's a man standing in the room, and Hisashi and Inko freak out. And this is when the man pulls his finger up to his lips. And this is when Hisashi kind of looks at the man, and he is like, Old man Akira? And the man kind of nods, like, with an accepting gaze, and he's, like, not being as threatening. And little Sakura, she's sitting there. I'm going to say that, like, 5.5 to, like, age them up a little bit. I'd say this happened at 5.5, like, within 6 months of their 6th year. And he basically walks over to them, and Inko and Sakura are a little nervous. And then this is when the man, he kind of stops. And he basically says, He picks up, like, the medical chart at the end of the bed and looks over it. And at this time, one of the doctor, the same doctor that that's her pediatrician, who happens to be working at the hospital that they were brought to. He walks in, and as soon as the door opens and he walks through, he's immediately lifted up into the air. Within a split second, Mikhail had moved from one side of the room to the next and was pushing this guy up against the wall. And the doctor puts his hand on the guy, and he's like, I'm the doctor, please let me down. I can't breathe. And he kind of like, oh, I'm sorry about that. And basically puts the guy down and kind of brushes him off. And he's like, I've been hunted before, and I've taken a chance coming down here. But after looking over at Hasashi, he's like, you look like her in the eye area a little bit. And you have your dad's jawline, though. And he's like, and just kind of like running across his jaw. He's like, yeah, that jawline's like, is kind of like rubbing his own jaw at the same time. And this basically confirms. I was like, so you really are old man Agil. What brings you here? Well, I got a call from someone like a couple years ago. It took me some time to get here. But someone in the family was born with a similar quirk, and I thought, maybe I should train them. Or at least prepare them for what's to come. So he basically tells Inko and Hasashi about his quirk. He tells them about his quirk, and he says, from the medical charts, and from what I've gathered on my way here about young Sakura, she does indeed have a very similar quirk. And the doctor asks, like, so is it true then? And he turns to the doctor and he's like, yes. And count this medical professionalism, okay? I've been hunted before because of my quirk, and it's not really fun. I've been experimented on. Hell, there's a reason why I left, and like went mad for a couple of centuries. Doctor kind of freaks out, and he's like, centuries? Wait, couple? And old man again, he kind of turns to the doctor and he's like, oh, crud, yeah, I've been around for a while. I don't really take too much into like world stuff, but if someone in my family is born with this quirk, we should probably help them out at least, right? Make me a horrible grandfather if I did it. So every like 50 years or so, he does come down from like where he goes off to. So now he turns to Hasashi and Inko, and he's like, I'm going to be taking the girl with me. And sorry, but you two don't really get a say in this. Because you've been doing a horrible job with her. She still has that on her neck. Like, didn't this accident happen, like, last night? Or, like, yesterday evening? Or, like, this happened, like, several hours, like, earlier today? She would be already healed up. You guys haven't been helping her train that quirk. Though, it's probably understandable, but your daughter will be safe if she's with me. And once I'm done training her, nothing's going to be able to harm her. And Sakura, she's freaked out by this. She just met this guy, and he's basically told her parents that he's going to be kidnapping her, and there's nothing they can do about it. So she's like, well, but can I at least say goodbye to them and spend a few days? And Gil, he kind of looks down and he's like, and smiles at Sakura. It's like, sweetie, I'm not a bad guy. I'm your, let's just call me your great grandfather. Best way to explain our relationship, and you are family, so I'm not here to hurt you. I'm going to be helping you out, young lady. Little girl. And he turns to Hasashi and Inko, and he says, I'll give you guys 1 week to say your goodbyes and spend some time with her. You will have contact with her, but after this week, you probably won't see her physically for several years. And by this, and then, like, the lights in the building basically go off again, and they're like, what's going on? Aren't the generators supposed to be working? And so the hospital room's completely black. And then, like, everything comes back on. The power is, like, restored to the hospital. And basically, this made Hasashi and Inko realize the power outage was caused by the guy that just said that he's going to be taking their daughter. If he can do something like that, they probably really don't have a choice in the matter. In any case, like later that afternoon, he speaks to Hasashi, he speaks to Inko while after Sakura had eventually fell asleep. And he tells her, it's like, I'm a little worried, but I'm pretty sure that was old man Nagil. Like, I've heard stories about him. People in our family that had, like, certain types of quirks and stuff, like offshoot quirks. He's always showed up every once in a while, and after they have trained with him, they were way stronger. So it really would be good for our daughter. Like, it's gonna suck not being able to see her for like every day, or possibly not see her for several years. But I think this would be good for her. She probably won't get hurt like this again. So Inko, like, agrees with Sashi, and she's like, you sure she'll be okay? Well, from stories of what my dad and what my grandmother told me, old man Agil, he's a man of his word. If he says he's going to do something, he'll do it. And I do believe that was him, because he kind of looked like my grandfather a little bit. He looked like he looked more American than my grandfather, but he does look like my grandfather. So I think it would be good for her. So with that, you beautiful souls, I'm going to end part 0 here. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this video makes up for the fact I haven't been able to upload in the past couple of days because of some sound issues. And I had to take 2 days off to get my stuttering under control. To be able to record again. So I apologize about that. Every single time I did go to record, I would just constantly loop, and I just kind of had to take a few days off from everything to, like, compose myself, and I'll try to be better about that in the future. And so comment down below if you want to see more of this series, and if you haven't already done so, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you beautiful souls in the next video.